They weren't drawn to your beauty, they were addicted to your purity because it reminded them of everything they'll never be. That's the truth they can't look at without flinching. Now imagine this for a moment, chosen one, a room full of people smiling at you, laughing with you, acting like friends, while quietly passing poison into your drink, not because they need to hurt you to survive, but because watching your confusion makes them feel powerful. That's what we're talking about here. Some people get turned on by control, but the most dangerous ones, they get turned on by innocence, by how lost you look when bad things start happening for no reason. Studies in psychology even show that narcissistic personalities gain stimulation from chaos they've personally created. They enjoy the dissonance, the moment their victim starts doubting their own reality, and that's what these people did to you. Every unlucky twist in your story wasn't random. It was orchestrated. And thank you, chosen one, for being here, for listening, for surviving, for still seeking truth when others would have given up. Don't forget to pay this message back by simply pressing like and subscribe to help spread this message to more souls, because it's our collective responsibility to spread the light. Thank you, chosen one, for being part of this mission. You are part of a force far greater than you realize. Now, back to what they never wanted you to see. They're obsessed with you, but not in a way that feels human. You were their mirror, reflecting their corruption in its rawest form. Every time you smiled genuinely, they saw everything fake within themselves. Your kindness made them itch. Your purity burned their ego like sunlight burns a shadow. They didn't understand how you could stay gentle after everything you went through, so they tested it. They planted chaos around you, invisible landmines disguised as normal life. The missed opportunities, the illnesses, the strange turns of events that seemed too perfectly timed. They weren't coincidences. They were signatures, quiet signatures from people who wanted to see how much it would take for you to break. But you didn't break. You got smarter. You began to notice patterns. You started connecting dots that terrified them. Because nothing is more dangerous to corrupt people than the awakening of the innocent they tried to destroy. It's sickening to realize that for years they took pleasure in your confusion. They whispered lies to make you doubt your memory, gaslit you into second-guessing your instincts, and staged drama just to watch how cute your panic looked. They didn't just betray you, they studied you. They measured your reactions. They wanted to see how far they could push before your light dimmed. But the universe keeps balance, and innocence is not weakness. It's clarity. It's the kind of purity that strips illusions from lies. You see, the people who get turned on by corruption always mistake simplicity for ignorance. But real power lives in restraint, in the soul that doesn't need to play dirty to win. And that's why they fear you now, because you stopped explaining yourself. You stopped reacting. You stopped feeding their addiction to your confusion. You started observing. And that's when everything flipped. When an innocent mind becomes aware, it's like lightning hitting water, unstoppable clarity that spreads everywhere. They thought they could trap you in guilt, make you apologize for being pure, for being trusting. But they underestimated how intelligence grows inside silence. You learned their patterns while pretending not to notice. You turned their game against them simply by refusing to play. There's a psychological fact. People who derive pleasure from causing emotional chaos are often compensating for deep internal powerlessness. They feed on reactions because their own lives lack purpose. They are drawn to light, not to bask in it, but to steal warmth. And when they realize they can't drain you anymore, they spiral. They start turning on each other. That's why lately you've noticed their masks slipping, lies collapsing, alliances cracking. The energy they once used to control you is now eating them from within. The universe is balancing accounts, and it's happening publicly this time. But here's the part they never expected. Your innocence didn't just survive, it evolved. It turned into discernment. The same heart they mocked for being too soft now feels vibrations before words are even spoken. You sense deceit before it takes form. That's not paranoia, that's refinement. Pain sharpened your intuition like a blade. And they can't stand it because you've become immune to their games. You see through manipulation instantly. You laugh at traps that used to scare you. And nothing is more humiliating to a manipulator than losing control of the one they once toyed with. So, yes, they were turned on by your innocence, chosen one, because it made them feel godlike. They thought they could manufacture storms and watch you drown. But instead, you learned how to breathe underwater. And now, every drop of pain they gave you has turned into armor. You walk differently now, calmer, quieter, but more dangerous than ever. Your peace frightens them because they know what it means. Their control is gone. You no longer belong to their confusion, their schemes, or their fantasies. You belong to yourself. The universe is about to prove that innocence isn't naive, it's sacred intelligence. And those who mistook your softness for stupidity are about to find out just how sharp gentleness can be when it's fully awake. And listen, chosen one, don't go anywhere. That was just the spark. What's coming next will set the whole blueprint on fire. We're about to break this down piece by piece and reveal just how far these people went, just to play with your innocence like it was a toy they could bend, twist, and ruin. But they failed, because you're still here. So if you're ready to expose the twisted game they played behind your back, drop the number 777 in the comments to declare, "I see through the confusion now." And if this message hits something deep in your spirit, bless the mission with a super thanks. Every gesture of support fuels this movement and helps wake up another soul who's been walking through darkness blindfolded. Thank you for being part of this. You're not just surviving, you're rising, and every share, like, and word you send forward keeps this light alive. And now, let's dive into it step by step. Trust me. If you're truly a chosen one, you'll feel that magnetic pull to stay locked in till the very end. This message isn't random. It was meant to find you. Let's get started. Number 1. Innocence is not weakness. It was their favorite weapon against you. The purest hearts are always seen as the easiest to break until the enemy finds out too late. You were never soft. You were sacred. That's the part that makes them rage in silence now. They underestimated the storm, wrapped in your silence. They thought because you didn't hit back, you couldn't. They thought your kindness was cluelessness, that your softness was stupidity, and that your innocence was a weakness they could exploit forever. But that was their biggest mistake, and now it's the reason their entire mask is crumbling in public. Because here's the truth, your innocence wasn't weakness, it was irritating to them, not because it was naive, but because it revealed just how dark they had become. They couldn't hide their filth when standing next to someone like you. You didn't even have to call them out, your energy did it for you. Your natural peace made their chaos look intentional. Your ability to love without manipulation made their games obvious. And instead of fixing themselves, they plotted to break you, thinking if they could just drag you down into the same mud they were in, they wouldn't have to feel so small next to you anymore. Now imagine this, chosen one, a poisonous snake trapped in a clear glass box, slithering around with no way out, but the box is sitting in sunlight and the heat is rising. That's what your innocence did to them. They were already filled with venom, but your light made it boil, and they hated you for it. Not because you wronged them, but because you refused to crawl like they did. Even psychology backs this up. Those with deeply wounded egos often seek out those with pure, gentle energy, not for healing, but to siphon that light, to dim it, to prove to themselves that no one is truly good, so they can feel better about how far they've fallen. That's why you were targeted, not because you were weak, but because your very existence challenged everything they told themselves to justify their corruption. And when they saw you winning without cheating, smiling without scheming, and loving without controlling, they couldn't stand it. It shook something in them. It exposed them. They needed your downfall to feel sane. But you weren't stupid, you were sacred, and sacred things don't fight back the way common things do. That's what confused them. While they screamed, lied, sabotaged, and stirred drama, you responded with stillness. And in that stillness the universe kept receipts. They thought your silence meant submission. But what they didn't know is that silence is the sound the universe makes when it's writing karma in ink. You're not the first chosen one they've done this to. They tried it with every soul whose light couldn't be bought. Think about people like Princess Diana, gentle, graceful, and glowing with pure heart energy, yet surrounded by vipers who mistook her grace for weakness. They tried to shame her, trap her, break her spirit, and yet her legacy outlived every one of their lies. Or think about Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, who carried love and kindness like a weapon in a world addicted to cruelty. People mocked him for being too soft, but his impact outlived cynicism itself. You are in that same lineage of sacred power, and yes, they were turned on by your innocence because it gave them control, or so they thought. They liked watching you question yourself. They liked seeing you trip over traps they carefully laid and pretending to help afterward. They wanted to be both the villain and the savior in your story. But every time you bounced back, every time you smiled again, every time you forgave without letting them back in, a part of them crumbled. Some of you are still wondering, why didn't I see it? Was I really that blind? No, chosen one, you were never blind. You just didn't expect war in a place that claimed to be your home. You didn't see enemies because you weren't raised to believe people who say I love you could also want your ruin. But now you know better. And now they're afraid. Because the moment the innocent wake up, the game flips. Here's what you need to remember. Your heart is not a liability. It's your authority. Your softness didn't make you weak. It kept you human in a world of actors. And now that you've gained clarity, now that you've seen behind the curtain, your purity is backed by awareness. That makes you unshakable. They can't weaponize what you've already faced head-on. They can't confuse you with false kindness anymore. And the scariest part for them, you're not even angry. You're just done. And when a chosen one gets done, really done, the universe starts executing justice faster than anyone can hide from. They never thought you'd get this far. They thought they could drain you until you'd lose your spark, doubt your worth, and silence your own voice. But they forgot. The universe always protects those who walk in truth. You weren't weak. You were protected. That's why every plan they made eventually collapsed. That's why the lies never stuck. That's why no matter how far they went, and they went low, you kept rising. Because innocence doesn't mean ignorance. It means alignment. And now you're aligned like never before. Let them be angry. Let them be obsessed. Let them talk. They lost access to your energy the moment they mistook your kindness for a weakness to exploit. What they thought was their biggest advantage turned out to be the very thing that exposed them. And now the world is seeing them for what they are, manipulators, users, and emotional parasites who fed off a chosen one too bright to belong in their dark little world. So don't dim your light to make them comfortable. Shine harder, walk louder, speak truth that shakes rooms. Because your innocence wasn't a flaw, it was the alarm that woke you up. And now it's the fire that's going to light your next level. They thought you were a victim. Turns out you were the mirror. And when the mirror fights back, the mask breaks. Welcome to the reckoning. Number 2. They sat at your table while plotting your sickness. They smiled across the table while stirring poison in your cup, not because you did something wrong, but because your joy made their emptiness louder. That's the type of evil you were surrounded by, chosen one. Not the kind that throws punches, the kind that offers you a drink. They laughed with you, broke bread with you, and said, "I've got your back," while mapping out how to break your spirit in slow motion. These weren't strangers. These were people who memorized your laugh, knew your routines, complimented your resilience, all while dreaming of the day you'd fall apart. You thought you had dinner companions. What you had were devils in disguise, and the plate was always served with a side of betrayal. Now imagine this: you're hosting a dinner, candles lit, table set with care, your energy open and welcoming. You're laughing, talking, feeding people with warmth, and across from you, someone is calculating your downfall between bites. They're watching you light up the room and wondering how to switch off your glow. They know you'd never suspect them. That's what makes the game so easy for them. That's why they stayed close, because only those sitting closest can hurt you in ways that don't leave visible wounds. And this wasn't paranoia, it was a pattern. Let's deal in facts. Betrayal almost never comes from outsiders. Studies in human psychology show that most emotional and psychological harm comes from individuals within one's trusted circle. Family, close friends, even lovers. Why? Because access is power. And you gave them access not because you were stupid, but because you were pure. You believed what they said. You judged people based on your heart, not their hidden intent. And for a while, they fooled you. Not because they were smart, but because you didn't think like them. You weren't playing chess. You were just trying to live in peace. But behind that peace, they were planting sickness. You think it's random that you suddenly fell ill before an important opportunity, that the day you finally got invited somewhere meaningful, you were curled over with pain you couldn't explain. Think again. You think it's coincidence that every time you tried to build something new, someone conveniently said or did something that killed your momentum. These weren't accidents. This was orchestration. They were playing with your life like it was a board game, only the prize wasn't money or fame. The prize was your confusion, your isolation, your collapse. They didn't want you dead. No, that would have made them look guilty. They wanted you just broken enough to need them, just sick enough to cancel your plans, just confused enough to trust them again. It was emotional sabotage on repeat. And the worst part, they got off on it. There's a twisted kind of thrill certain people feel when they can manipulate someone who still trusts them. Your loyalty became their leverage, your softness became their playground, and you're probably asking yourself, how did I not see it? Because they were smart enough to pretend it was all just life. They hid behind phrases like, "You're just too sensitive," or "You're overthinking it," whenever your intuition flared. And because you didn't want to be dramatic, you silenced yourself. You told yourself it was just stress, just hormones, just bad timing. But the truth? It was calculated. And now that you've stepped back, the pattern is undeniable. This is spiritual warfare, chosen one. They weren't after your money. They were after your frequency, your light, your mental clarity. Because when you're clear-headed, your decisions are precise. When your spirit is settled, your gifts become unstoppable. But sickness, whether physical, emotional, or spiritual, blurs everything. They didn't want to destroy you instantly. They wanted you slowly unraveling while still looking intact. That way, nobody else would believe you when you said something was wrong. And here's the cruel irony. They wanted you to keep smiling, to keep showing up, to keep being strong, because the longer you stayed visible while suffering silently, the more powerful they felt. Some of them even called it karma, said you deserved what was happening, projected their guilt onto you, and convinced others that your pain was somehow your fault. Meanwhile, they were orchestrating the very chaos you were crying over. Let's not sugarcoat it. These people were sick, and you were their experiment. But they forgot one thing: you're a chosen one, and chosen ones always wake up. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. And when we wake up, we don't just remember, we reclaim, we rebuild, we rise, stronger, smarter, sharper. And when we do, we don't seek revenge, we seek revelation. We let the truth do what it's always done, dismantle lies and set the record straight. Because nothing screams justice louder than surviving a storm they built specifically for you. They sat at your table while plotting your sickness, thinking you'd never see the snake beneath the smile. But here you are, eyes wide open. Not only did you survive, you decoded the whole setup, and now they're scared. Because the game only works when the target doesn't know they're a target, but you know now, and they can feel it. Your silence isn't quiet anymore, it's loud with awareness. Every step you take without them is a step they can't control. Every boundary you set is a door they can't walk through. Every day you choose peace, they lose power. You were never weak for trusting them. They were weak for needing to destroy something they could have just respected. They had a seat at your table and chose to spit in the food instead of savor the blessing. And now, that seat is gone. That access is revoked. That era is over. What they don't realize yet is this: you don't just rise, you rise with receipts. You rise with vision. You rise with a deeper connection to the universe, who saw everything they did behind your back and already started balancing the scale. So walk forward, chosen one, not in fear, but in full awareness. Your worst days weren't bad luck. They were lessons wrapped in betrayal. And now you've learned, you've awakened, and your presence, clean, calm, and no longer confused, is the karma they never expected to face. Let them sit at their own tables now, alone, plotting sickness that will never reach you again. You've outgrown their poison, you've outlived their games, and now your healing is louder than their betrayal. That's power. That's justice. And that's just the beginning. Number 3, they put crime scene tape around your peace. They didn't just want to ruin your peace, they wanted to fence it in, mark it as theirs, and stand guard like they built it. That's how shameless they are, chosen one. The same people who never lifted a finger to help you heal had the audacity to show up after you created a safe space, just to poison it with their drama, their judgment, their presence. You built that peace with blood and tears, and they waltzed in like it was theirs to rearrange. This wasn't random, this was strategy. They saw that you were finally finding balance, finally getting quiet enough to hear your own intuition again, finally forming boundaries, and that terrified them. Because your healing meant their control was slipping. So what did they do? They did what cowards always do. They marked your joy like a crime scene. Metaphorically, and sometimes literally, they tried to lock you inside the very space you created to feel free. They wanted your healing to become your prison. And that's what's so twisted, isn't it? They didn't want to see you move on. They didn't want you healed, whole, or happy, because then you wouldn't need them. They weren't scared of your distance. They were scared of your growth. Because every inch you rise is another reminder of what they failed to become. And you've probably asked yourself, why didn't they just leave me alone? Why follow me into the places I made sacred? Because parasites don't feed on walls, they feed on energy. And your peace was glowing, your joy was blinding. Even when you were low, the fact that you were rebuilding threatened them. They couldn't stand watching you evolve, so they tried to sabotage your safe zones, friendships, creative projects, even your home. Anything that gave you light, they tried to dim. But here's what they forgot, that peace was never theirs to touch, and the universe saw everything. It saw how they tried to limit your expansion, how they mocked your solitude, how they turned your calm into chaos just to keep you from leveling up. But now, that quarantine they tried to tape around your joy, it's breaking. The universe is tearing down their barricades, and your peace is spreading past every line they ever drew. So don't let them back in. Don't negotiate your sanctuary. You owe no one access to the space that saved you. Let them stay mad. Let them choke on the silence they used to weaponize. Because you're not locked in anymore. They matched B, D, and Shay, and Shah. And now, the universe is setting you free on a level they can't even follow. Number 4, they don't want you to feel safe with anyone. They didn't just want to break your heart, they wanted to break your trust in everyone so you'd never feel safe again. That was always the real plan. These people weren't just jealous, they were strategic. They weren't content with watching you fall out with them. They needed to make sure you never trusted anyone else either. Because if you healed, if you found safety, community, or love again, you'd become unstoppable. And that terrified them more than anything. Think about it, chosen one. How is it that every time you started building a new connection, something went wrong? A sudden fight, a weird misunderstanding, an unexpected shift in energy. That wasn't just bad chemistry. That was manipulation, sabotage. In many cases, it was their words in someone else's ears. They planted seeds of doubt, rumors, twisted truths. They stalked your comfort and tore it away just before it bloomed. Because the moment you started trusting again, you were no longer theirs to control. And let's be clear, this wasn't about love or even friendship. This was territorial warfare. Like wolves marking what isn't even theirs, they tried to claim ownership over your healing. They wanted to be the only ones you leaned on, so they could twist your reality every time you started standing up straighter. They wanted to keep you isolated, so their influence stayed unchallenged. They weren't just enemies, they were emotional colonizers, invading your peace, controlling your perceptions, and policing your joy. You might ask, why would someone who once claimed to care do this? Because you were becoming too powerful. Because peace is dangerous to people who thrive in chaos. When you're at peace, you stop needing validation. You start seeing clearly, and people who can't control you despise when you can think for yourself. That's why they targeted your trust. Because if they couldn't destroy you directly, they'd make sure you didn't trust the hands that came to lift you. But what they didn't count on was the universe standing guard. They didn't know that every betrayal was actually training. Every heartbreak was recalibration. And now, you don't just see people for who they are. You feel it. You don't question your gut anymore. You trust it. And the universe confirms what your soul whispers. So let them keep watching. Let them stay pressed, because the very connections they tried to sabotage are now being restored. But without them in the picture, you're finally safe again, not because the world changed, but because you changed. You see the traps now, and they'll never isolate you again. Number 5, they come in packs, fake friends working together. Some of your enemies aren't individuals, they're a pack of cowards in alliance, bonding over the downfall of someone they couldn't become. Chosen one, the attacks weren't random, the betrayals weren't isolated. You were never just dealing with one snake, you were in a pit. And the scariest part, half of them were smiling in your face while comparing notes behind your back like it was a group project. Family, friends, lovers, co-workers, people from different corners of your life, somehow moving in sync, because destruction becomes a sport when the target is chosen. They came in packs for one reason: they couldn't take you down alone. Your energy was too strong, your light was too pure, so they needed help. And what better way to destroy someone than through a network of familiar faces? That's why you kept getting betrayed by different people with the same patterns. It wasn't coincidence. It was a system, a spiritual smear campaign. And every betrayal you endured wasn't isolated pain. It was organized chaos. Think about it. How is it that two people who don't even talk somehow end up knowing your business? How is it that someone you barely told anything to magically knew the one detail that could hurt you the most? That's not just gossip. That's coordination. That's intentional. These aren't just fake friends. They're collaborators in your collapse. They sit in private conversations, dissecting your life like they've earned the right to comment. Because to them, your glow is offensive. Your healing is inconvenient. Your boundaries are a threat. And maybe you've asked yourself, why me? Why do I attract these kinds of people? Because you're rare, because you're the real thing, because light exposes darkness even when it doesn't mean to. You never had to call them out. Your presence did. You made them uncomfortable just by existing. And so they teamed up. They turned their jealousy into a mission and their weakness into a clique. Misery moves in packs, and so does spiritual envy. But here's the twist. The universe let it happen for a reason. It exposed them together so you'd know who never deserved your loyalty in the first place. You weren't meant to fight this war person by person. You were meant to see the network and cut it off completely. That's the elevation. That's the protection. That's the clarity only a chosen one can handle. So let them keep whispering, let them keep gathering in groups to discuss the one person they couldn't break, you. Because while they were forming a circle to destroy you, the universe was building a force field around your purpose. And now that you're aware, every alliance against you is crumbling from the inside out. Number 6. They want you back in the trap because you escaped. They don't miss you, they miss the access, the control, the power, the old version of you that still apologized for bleeding after being stabbed. That's the version they're calling back. Not the healed you, not the awakened you. They're desperate to rewind time, to drag you back into the same trap you clawed your way out of. But here's the thing, chosen one. You didn't escape by accident. You were delivered by design. The universe pulled you out of that pit, not to go back, but to never return. Now that you're finally breathing clean air, they're whispering things like, "You've changed," or "You're isolating yourself." But let's be real, what they're really saying is, "We can't manipulate you like we used to." Your silence unnerves them. Your distance is a threat. Because for the first time, they can't study your emotions up close and play with your vulnerability like it's a game board. And that's why they're trying to bait you. Invitations, fake apologies, sudden kindness, all just rebranded traps. See, they've rebranded your healing season as exile because they don't want to admit you chose peace over performance. They want you to believe you're lonely when you're actually being preserved. They want you to think you've been cast out when you were really called out by the universe to recover, to rebuild, and to remember who the hell you are. You weren't hiding, you were healing, and now that you're stronger, they want back in. But not to celebrate you, to reset you, back to confusion, back to self-doubt, back to needing their validation to feel whole. And you might ask, what if I gave them a chance again? Maybe they've changed. Chosen one, the version of you that entertained that question. That version is gone. That was the version that excused abuse, that rationalized betrayal, that mistook chaos for closeness. You don't owe that chapter a reread. Let them live with the version of you that stopped replying, that stopped explaining, that disappeared, not out of weakness, but reclamation. They're not calling you back because they love you. They're calling you back because they lost control, and the moment you stopped reacting, the entire script broke. They lost the lead role in the drama they created. And now they want a rewrite. But you're not available for auditions anymore. You're booked and busy, starring in the life they never believed you were capable of building. So keep your distance, keep your boundaries like steel, because what they called exile was actually your evolution. You didn't run away from them, you returned to you, and the version of you they used to manipulate. That one's been buried. What stands in its place now is a chosen one on a mission, immune to guilt, untouched by games, and no longer afraid to say, you can't sit at this table anymore. Let them call that exile. The universe calls it protection. Number 7. Covert abuse is still abuse. You just couldn't prove it. Just because it didn't leave a bruise doesn't mean it didn't leave a scar. The deepest wounds are the ones no one can see, but you still bleed from them every day. That's the war they waged on you, chosen one. A quiet, invisible battle where every weapon was psychological, every tactic was emotional, and every bruise was hidden under layers of manipulation. This wasn't just abuse. This was covert warfare, carefully measured, ritualistic, precise. And just like a perfect crime, they made sure there was no evidence left behind, except for the version of you that had to silently carry it all. These people knew exactly what they were doing. They didn't hit you, they didn't scream, they didn't leave marks on your skin. Instead, they used silence, sarcasm, dismissiveness, guilt, and psychological games to tear you apart. The kind of abuse that doesn't get called out because it wears the mask of normalcy. And when you finally tried to explain it, people looked at you sideways. Are you sure? Maybe you're overreacting. But they seem so nice. That was the double punishment. Not just enduring the abuse, but being discredited for surviving it. You weren't imagining things, you were being conditioned. Covert abusers are master architects of confusion. They use gaslighting to twist your memory. They use fake concern to bury control. They make you feel like every breakdown you have is your own fault, when really they were the ones building the cage and locking you in from the inside. And here's the truth. It worked. For a while, you began to question your own judgment. You hesitated to speak up. You tolerated behaviors that your soul screamed against. Why? Because they trained you to believe your pain wasn't valid unless it could be seen. But the universe saw it, all of it, every silent breakdown, every forced smile, every time you walked away from a conversation feeling smaller, colder, more confused. The universe recorded it. That's why your healing is so powerful now. Because you're not just healing from arguments, you're healing from invisible sabotage, from energy attacks, from manipulation dressed up as love. And that kind of healing isn't weak, it's warrior level. You've probably wondered, why did nobody notice? Why didn't anyone step in? Because abusers like this operate in shadows. They perform in public. They charm. They smile. They show up as the caring one, the devoted one, the one who just wants what's best for you. But behind closed doors, they drain, they gaslight, they strip you bare. And because your pain didn't come with police reports or bruised limbs, you were expected to stay silent. But not anymore. This is your confirmation, chosen one. You weren't crazy, you were targeted. And now that you know the game, you've already won half the battle. You see the signs before they start. You trust your discomfort. You no longer tolerate what you used to normalize. That's growth, that's protection, that's power. And those people, they're panicking now, because covert abusers rely on one thing: your silence. But you're not silent anymore. You've found your voice. And every time you speak truth, even if it's just to yourself, it sends shockwaves through the lies they built. Let them deal with that collapse. Let the universe continue exposing them, because what they thought was a hidden crime is now public spiritual evidence. You survived an invisible battlefield, and you did it without losing your soul. That makes you powerful beyond words. So walk boldly now, chosen one. The scars may be invisible, but the strength they forged in you, that's something the enemy can never hide again. Number 8. Your innocence made you a threat in a family of snakes. You weren't the black sheep. You were the golden one in a room full of snakes, hissing about why they couldn't be you. That's the truth they've been running from, chosen one. You were born into a house that didn't understand peace, loyalty, or unconditional love. Only politics, positioning, and pretense. Where love was currency, truth was a threat, and betrayal was tradition. And right from the start, you didn't fit the design. You weren't built for games. You weren't wired for deceit. You came into a family fluent in manipulation, and you, with your soft heart and pure intentions, refused to learn their tongue. That's why they feared you. That's why they attacked you. They saw your innocence not as beauty, but as danger. Because in their world, honesty exposes rot. Calmness highlights chaos. Your very presence made them uneasy. You walked in rooms they owned, yet somehow your spirit led. You didn't need their approval. You didn't need their validation. And that independence, that quiet refusal to participate in dysfunction, made you public enemy number one in your own bloodline. Now imagine this for a moment. Chosen one, a nest of snakes, slithering and hissing, always ready to strike. But suddenly, one among them begins to shed not just skin, but bloodline energy. That's you. You came here to end cycles they were addicted to, the jealousy, the gossip, the silent competitions. But they didn't see healing when they looked at you. They saw exposure, and when people build their identity around dysfunction, anyone who challenges that structure becomes a villain. You've probably asked yourself, why do they hate me when I've done nothing but try to love them? Because your love unmasks them. Your kindness doesn't comfort, it convicts. It reminds them of everything they've buried. You shine light into places they wanted to keep dark. And snakes can't stand the sun. So they started whisper campaigns. They labeled you too sensitive, too distant, ungrateful. They turned your boundaries into accusations, all so they could justify the envy they were drowning in. But here's what they never expected. You'd survive outside the nest. They thought cutting you off would crush you. They thought isolating you would silence you. But isolation was your initiation. It was the universe's way of pulling you away from venom so your wings could grow. You didn't lose your family, you lost your predators. That's the shift they'll never comprehend. And now those same people are watching in disbelief, because everything they said you'd fail at, you're thriving in. Every curse they whispered behind your back turned into motivation. Every betrayal became a stepping stone. The universe flipped the script, and now their own energy is choking them. The same mouths that spat poison about you are now tasting bitterness for real. They thought they could out-scheme you, but they forgot something critical. Innocence carries divine backing. The universe guards those who walk in truth. You might have been naive once, but now you're wise and still pure at heart. That combination, it's lethal to dark systems. So don't regret being different, chosen one. You were never meant to blend in with them. You were meant to expose them by existing. They called you weak for not joining their wars, but peace is the ultimate rebellion in a world addicted to control. You broke generational habits they worshipped. You shattered illusions they depended on, and now they whisper about you not because they hate you, but because they can't stop thinking about how you did what they couldn't. Rise without ruining anyone. Let them keep hissing. Let them circle back pretending they've changed. You know the signs now. You see through the masks. You no longer need validation from a family of snakes because you've built a lineage of your own, one rooted in truth, integrity, and freedom. They taught survival through betrayal. The universe taught you survival through authenticity, and authenticity will always outlast manipulation. Always. Number 9. They were secretly turned on by your confusion. They weren't trying to love you, they were trying to watch you unravel, because your confusion gave them a high that truth never could. That's how dark it really was, chosen one. This wasn't just jealousy, it wasn't even just sabotage. This was obsession. Sick, twisted, ritualistic obsession with watching you doubt yourself. The more lost you looked, the more satisfied they felt. Because in their broken minds, your clarity was a threat. But your confusion, that was something they could control. They didn't just tolerate your suffering, they needed it. They needed you to keep second-guessing everything. They needed you anxious, unsure, apologizing for things you never did wrong, because your light was too pure to attack directly. So they came through the back door, through your mind. That's where they set the trap. They twisted your own intuition against you, made you question your memory, your instincts, your worth. Why? Because the moment you lost your inner compass, they could lead you anywhere, usually straight into self-doubt and sabotage. And what made it worse? You trusted them. You believed they were being honest. You thought, maybe they know better than me. That's what covert manipulators live for, to hijack your own voice and replace it with their poison. And once they had you confused, they became addicted to that power. Because when you're unsure of yourself, you're easier to influence, easier to control, easier to break. Imagine this, chosen one, a child building a castle out of blocks, focused, peaceful, and someone walks over and knocks it over, not because they needed space, but because watching the child cry makes them feel big. That's what they were doing to you. Every time you gained momentum, emotionally, spiritually, romantically, they'd disrupt it. Smile. Offer false comfort. Then watch you spiral. That spiral was their drug. You've probably asked yourself, why didn't they just leave me alone if they hated me so much? Because they didn't hate you, they envied you. And envy is different. Hatred wants distance. Envy wants proximity. It wants to watch. It wants to hover over your joy, corrupt your confidence, and watch it fall apart. They didn't want to destroy you in secret. They wanted front row seats to the moment you stopped believing in yourself. But they miscalculated, because confusion doesn't last forever, not for a chosen one. The fog lifts, the mind clears, and once clarity returns, so does power. The power they tried to steal, the inner voice they tried to mute, the instinct they tried to rewire, all of it returns stronger. And now, they're sick with regret. Because nothing is more humiliating to a manipulator than watching someone they once confused walk in full self-awareness. You no longer ask for permission to trust yourself. You don't need external approval to validate your truth. And that clarity, that calm knowing, it burns them alive. Let them sit with that. Let them remember every moment they smirked while you spiraled, because now you rise with eyes wide open, no longer seeking answers from people who only ever gave you confusion. They wanted to own your mind, but the universe always had your soul, and now that you've reclaimed both, there's nothing they can twist anymore. You were never weak. You were never lost. You were targeted. But the war is over now, and you're no longer the confused one. They are, because they just realized the one they were trying to keep in the dark is now shining too bright to ever be manipulated again. Number 10. The universe is done letting them take while you suffer. They took everything from you, your peace, your trust, your joy, and thought they'd walk away untouched. But now the universe has declared, the feast is over. The days of watching them eat off your plate while you starved for crumbs are done. Chosen one. No more suffering in silence while they dance in stolen blessings. No more crying in the shadows while they mock your pain in the light. The universe has been patient. It gave them time to change, time to make it right. But they used that time to dig deeper into their darkness. And now the clock has run out. It's over. You were never meant to carry the weight of other people's karma. You were meant to rise. But for so long, your blessings came with hidden costs. Love that hurt, success that backfired, joy that disappeared the moment you held it. Why? Because they were pulling strings behind the scenes, whispering curses, sending bad energy, doing everything they could to keep your wins contaminated. You weren't just unlucky. You were under siege. But even then, the universe held back. It watched. It waited. It gave them a chance to stop. And they didn't. So now the universe is stepping in, and it's not asking permission. This is your shift, chosen one, from burdened to blessed, from robbed to restored. You're not just getting what was taken, you're getting interest, healing without confusion, love without sabotage, peace without disruption. It's all coming back, but clean. No poison, no strings, no interference, and the ones who swore you'd never taste that kind of joy. They'll watch it overflow in your life while theirs dries up. You've probably wondered, why did I have to suffer so long? Why did they get away with it? They didn't. Every tear you cried became a receipt. Every silent betrayal was written in the book of divine balance. They didn't escape justice. They delayed it. But the delay is over. The pain you endured in private is now becoming the power you'll walk in publicly. And the best part? You won't need revenge. Your joy will be the revenge. Let them choke on the silence they tried to bury you in. Let them sit in the reality they built, now that you're no longer holding the weight. You were the power source they depended on, and now you've been unplugged from their madness. The cycle is broken, the curse reversed, the suffering turned to strength, and they can't stop it, undo it, or fake their way back into it. The universe is done letting them take while you suffer. From this moment forward, your table is sacred, your blessings are protected, and your life, finally, is yours. And that brings us full circle, chosen one. The truth is no longer hiding, and neither are you. The same ones who fed off your silence, mocked your kindness, and turned your innocence into a target are now watching in confusion. Because you didn't just survive, you shifted. You became the version of you they swore would never exist, free, clear, and fully awakened. The universe is no longer allowing them to take what you've earned. Now it's your season, uninterrupted and protected. If this message hit your soul, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop the number 77 in the comments to seal this awakening, and share this message forward. Someone else needs to know they're not crazy, they're chosen.